Here's a rewritten version of your script that enhances its readability and flow while maintaining the original content's depth and importance. This version focuses on engaging storytelling while still presenting the historical facts in a clear and compelling way. For the Native American nations of the Great Plains, the buffalo, bison, was more than just an animal. It was the lifeblood that sustained their entire way of life. To the tribes of this region, the Sioux, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Blackfoot, Pawnee, Kiowa, Mandan, Comanche, and many others, the buffalo symbolized the intricate connection between humanity and the natural world. It was considered a sacred gift from the Creator, a being imbued with spiritual significance that provided not only physical sustenance, but also cultural and religious inspiration. The buffalo, or Tatanka, as it is known in the Lakota language, was revered not only for its flesh, but also for its role in maintaining the spiritual balance of the world. To remove the buffalo was, in many ways, to unravel the very essence of the Plains Indians' existence. For the tribes of the Plains, the buffalo was central to every aspect of life, from sustenance and shelter to spirituality and ceremony. The vast herds that once roamed the plains, numbering in the tens of millions, were seen as both a physical resource and a manifestation of the Creator's generosity. The buffalo provided the people with everything they needed: food, clothing, tools, and materials for constructing homes, but it also occupied a crucial place in their spiritual and cultural lives. To these communities, the buffalo was more than an animal to be hunted. It was a relative, a sacred being that had willingly offered itself to sustain the people. This spiritual relationship with the buffalo formed the foundation of the Plains Indians' worldview, influencing their religious practices, their social structures, and their understanding of the world around them. Historian Richard B. Williams captured the essence of this profound relationship when he wrote, "The American Indian and the buffalo coexisted in a rare balance between nature and man." The buffalo was more than just an animal. It was an integral part of the religion of the Plains Indians. This deep spiritual bond transcended the simple relationship between hunter and prey. The buffalo, in many ways, was considered a teacher and a guide. By observing the buffalo's behavior, the Plains Indians learned how to live in harmony with the land, how to survive the harsh conditions of the plains, and how to honor the cycles of nature. The buffalo, with its strength, resilience, and ability to survive in an often unforgiving environment, became a symbol of endurance and survival for the people who depended on it. The Plains Indians believed that the buffalo had been placed on the earth by the Creator specifically for their survival. This belief was reflected in their religious ceremonies, legends, and everyday practices. In many tribes, the buffalo was honored in special ceremonies, where prayers were offered to its spirit, thanking it for its sacrifice. These ceremonies were not just acts of gratitude, but also spiritual transactions, ensuring that the buffalo's spirit would continue to bless the people with its presence. To disrupt this balance, to hunt the buffalo without reverence or respect was considered a grave offense, not only against the buffalo, but against the natural order itself. This sacred relationship with the buffalo was woven into the very fabric of Plains Indian culture. Every part of the buffalo was used, ensuring that nothing was wasted. The hide was used for clothing, blankets, and the walls of teepees. The bones were fashioned into tools and weapons, and the sinew was used to make bowstrings and thread. Even the hooves and horns were utilized, made into utensils, cups, and ceremonial objects. The people lived in a state of complete interdependence with the buffalo, taking only what they needed and always giving thanks for what was provided. This way of life, in which the buffalo was both the provider and the symbol of spiritual abundance, created a culture of sustainability and respect for the natural world. In many Plains Indian creation stories, the buffalo plays a central role, often appearing as a gift from the gods or as a mediator between the human and spiritual realms. For the Lakota Sioux, one of the most important religious figures is White Buffalo Calf Woman, a sacred being who brought the people the 7 sacred rites, including the Sun Dance and the Peace Pipe ceremony. White Buffalo Calf Woman is said to have appeared during a time of great hardship, teaching the people how to live in harmony with the earth and with each other. After delivering her teachings, she transformed into a white buffalo and disappeared into the horizon, symbolizing the buffalo's deep connection to the divine. To this day, the appearance of a white buffalo is considered an extraordinary spiritual event, a sign of good fortune, and a reminder of the sacred covenant between the people and the Creator. The Cheyenne, too, have their own legends about the buffalo. According to Cheyenne mythology, the buffalo were first given to the people by a supernatural savior figure, Grandmother, who rewarded 3 brave hunters with the first herd. In this story, the buffalo are seen as a divine gift, a manifestation of the Creator's love and generosity. Such legends reinforce the idea that the buffalo was not merely a resource to be exploited, but a sacred being, a bridge between the human world and the spiritual realm. The reverence for the buffalo extended to the hunt itself. The Plains Indians did not view hunting as a sport or a pastime, but as a sacred duty. The hunt was often preceded by prayers and rituals, asking for the buffalo's blessing and permission to take its life. The hunters, too, were bound by strict codes of conduct, ensuring that the buffalo was treated with the utmost respect. Once a buffalo was killed, it was customary to offer a prayer of thanks to its spirit, acknowledging the sacrifice it had made for the people's survival. This sense of reverence for the buffalo was reflected in the careful, respectful way the animal was butchered and its parts distributed among the community. In some tribes, such as the Mandan, the buffalo was honored in special ceremonies like the buffalo dance, a ritual performed to ensure the continued abundance of the herds. In other tribes, the buffalo skull was used in sacred ceremonies, often placed in a position of honor within the teepee or used as a focal point in religious rituals. These practices reinforce the idea that the buffalo was not just an animal, but a sacred presence, a being that existed in both the physical and spiritual realms. The arrival of the horse in the plains during the 18th century revolutionized the buffalo hunt. Before the introduction of the horse, hunting buffalo was an arduous and often dangerous task. Hunters on foot would drive buffalo into traps, forcing them off cliffs or into enclosures where they could be killed. These hunts required careful planning and coordination, as buffalo were powerful animals capable of running at high speeds and covering vast distances. The horse, however, transformed the hunt, allowing the Plains Indians to pursue buffalo with greater speed and efficiency. Mounted hunters could now chase buffalo across the plains, using bows, arrows, and spears to bring down their prey. While the horse made hunting easier and more efficient, it also changed the dynamics of Plains Indian society. With the ability to hunt larger numbers of buffalo, tribes could now accumulate greater wealth in the form of hides, meat, and other resources. This, in turn, led to increased competition between tribes for control of hunting grounds. The horse, while a valuable tool, also intensified conflicts between neighboring tribes, as each sought to secure access to the buffalo herds that roamed the plains. Despite the changes brought by the horse, the spiritual relationship between the Plains Indians and the buffalo remained intact. The buffalo continued to be seen as a sacred being, and the hunt continued to be conducted with respect and reverence. However, this delicate balance between the people and the buffalo was threatened by forces beyond the control of the Plains Indians. In the mid-19th century, as Euro-American settlers began moving westward, driven by the promise of land, wealth, and opportunity, the buffalo became a target for mass slaughter. With the expansion of the railroad and the development of cattle ranching, the vast herds of buffalo that had once dominated the Great Plains were seen as an obstacle to progress. The U.S. government, in its efforts to control the Plains Indians and force them onto reservations, encouraged the destruction of the buffalo as a means of undermining their way of life. Between 1840 and 1890, millions of buffalo were killed, often for their hides alone, with the rest of the carcass left to rot on the plains. Hunters, armed with rifles and aided by the railroad, could now kill thousands of buffalo in a single day. The U.S. government viewed the destruction of the buffalo as a way to force the Plains Indians into submission, depriving them of their primary food source and disrupting their nomadic way of life. By the end of the 19th century, the buffalo population had been reduced from an estimated 60 million to fewer than 300 individuals. For the Plains Indians, the near extinction of the buffalo was more than just an ecological disaster. It was a spiritual and cultural catastrophe. The buffalo, their sacred relative and lifeblood, was being annihilated before their eyes, and with it, the foundation of their way of life. The loss of the buffalo led to widespread starvation and hardship, as the people were forced to rely on government rations and abandon their traditional ways. Despite this devastation, the Plains Indians refused to let their connection to the buffalo die. In the early 20th century, efforts to conserve and repopulate the buffalo began, led by both Native American communities and conservationists. Today, thanks to these efforts, buffalo herds have been restored in many areas of North America, and the buffalo has been recognized as a national symbol of resilience and survival. The buffalo's return is a testament to the resilience of both the animal and the Native American tribes who fought to protect it. For the Plains Indians, the buffalo remains more than just an animal. It is a living symbol of their cultural heritage and spiritual connection to the land. As the buffalo continues to roam the plains, it serves as a reminder of the enduring bond between the people and the natural world, a bond that, despite centuries of adversity, remains unbroken. Between 1840 and 1890, the Great Plains of North America witnessed one of the most tragic and deliberate mass slaughters of wildlife in history. Millions of buffalo, once the dominant and majestic species of the region, were systematically exterminated in a campaign that was more than just a byproduct of westward expansion. It was a targeted effort to undermine the Plains Indian nations whose cultures, livelihoods, and very existence were intertwined with the survival of these great herds. The buffalo, or American bison, bison, was the foundation of life for the nomadic tribes of the plains, and by removing this keystone species, the U.S. government and settlers sought to not only conquer the land, but also to dominate and control its indigenous peoples. The Great Slaughter is a somber chapter in American history, reflecting a complex mix of political ambition, economic greed, environmental destruction, and cultural devastation.